Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Devin Dickinson with Lauren, and today we're in part 4 of selling your business. And this is where we kind of get into the deep end, the nitty gritty of it. And we're going to go through some principles today because I want you guys to truly understand how complex this part is. And I've learned this over years of doing it, and I'm still learning something new almost every day. And so, but hopefully, I can shed some light on this so that when you're going through this process, you go in with a little more eyes wide open, or you hear something where someone says, "Oh yeah, I sold my company for $50 million." Maybe you have a little better insight as to what that actually really means, and at the end of the day, how many dollars and ducats you actually put in your pocket.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So, Devin, to start off, I want to ask you, obviously, we had 3 other parts to this series, went through everything that's involved to getting to the point where you can sell your business. Just really quickly, tell me what the emotions that were going through your head when you got to this point now in your personal experience.
That real, like, oh my gosh, it's real now, right? Like it goes from a concept to what happens in this process is once you have your people, and let's say you have a banker, investment bankers we talked about before, they're going to go and they're actually going to put something in front of you, which is more or less, we call it a deck, a business presentation. Mine was, I think, 45 pages long. And it basically broke down the company. So it kind of gives you a very, very intimate look at your company, what the competition's like, what the financials are like, your history, your strengths, your weaknesses. And it really is more or less an overall diagnosis of your company. And then at the end of the day, they're going to put this in front of you. You're going to say, I agree with it. I don't. And obviously they're trying to present it as well as possible, right? Like kind of like a brochure for selling your house, right? Like, oh, it's got a beautiful backyard and with a view. And, the bathroom was remodeled in 2022, right? Like all of these different things, right? So it really tries to highlight your company and the potential, because people not only want to know what they're buying, they want to know what the potential is. And so this deck is going to present your company in the best light, the historics, the current, and what it could be.
Okay.
And from there, this is what people are going to basically use to start the conversation off. So they call it a SIM. I forget what it stands for, but it's basically a deck, right? PowerPoint, more or less, presentation that the investment bankers will go and find lists of people who would potentially buy your company. Mm-hmm. So we talked, this could be strategic companies, people that are your competitors, people that are in adjacent industries that would maybe like to, see your industry as, symbiotic, like, ooh, if their customers are similar to my customers, we could cross-sell, right? So competition, symbiotic relation, or symbiotic type companies. Also just pure companies are investors, private equity groups that literally raise money to buy companies, grow them and flip them, just like people raise money to go and buy houses to go and remodel and flip. Yeah. That's essentially what private equity does. And all of these different investment groups, and so each private equity group has their own little story to tell. Some of them have like a 3 to 5 year hold process, which is very typical.
Can I jump in there? What do you mean by a 3 to 5 year hold process?
Great question. Sorry. The private equity group, if they were to buy you, their goal is within 3 to 5 years, hopefully no longer than 7, make your company worth 3 to 5 times what it originally was and sell it, right? Okay. And so just like people do this with the house, where they're going to go and buy the house, put as little money down as possible, take out as much leverage or loans as possible, do the remodel, make your house look even prettier, and then flip it as quickly as possible to make as much money as possible. That's what they do with businesses. And, a lot of people have, negative things to say about private equity. I think they're great. I think they really help to evolve companies. I think, you have to be shrewd because, there are some people out there that are not trustworthy, but for, most part, these are very professional people that are demanding a return on their investment, but, and they're good buyers in this space too. So then you have private equity, so this is kind of like who they're sending this out to. I think in my case, we sent out, I want to say like 300 of 300 different of the decks to pitch decks to these various companies. I think we got 70 to reply. Of those 70, they were like 70 that replied that were interested. The 70 narrowed down to like 15 phone calls. And those 15 phone calls, I would hop on, and this is pretty typical, right? So I hopped on about an hour, and again, the investment banker is kind of orchestrating all of this.
I was going to ask that. So at this point, it sounds like when it comes to identifying the potential buyers, it's you as the business owner are taking more of a passive approach, and you're letting your investment banker do all that work and bring them to you.
Absolutely, because it's a ton of work. If you think about how many hours they put in just producing the deck, it's hundreds of hours. Like, it's a lot of work. And so people are like, I don't want an investment banker. Are they really worth it? Am I really gonna have to pay that much money to my investment banker? A good investment banker is worth it, right? Because it's a ton of work. They know what they're doing. They're gonna get max value for it. Like, you don't know 150 people to send this deck out to. Like, they do, right? They know who the buyers are, right? They know approximate valuations. They know how to put a deck together. They know what people care about and they don't care about, right? And don't forget, this whole time you're just running your company, right? So you're still running your company, which is hard to do, right? So it's like hours and hours just to run a company. So the investment banker will kind of orchestrate all this and navigate it and say, all right, on Thursday at 7:30 you have this call, and Saturday morning you're going to do this, because it becomes during this time, like, things happen fast. I mean, so fast, like so fast, because time kills deals. And they're talking about millions of dollars. So I mean, everyone is hair on fire and things happen quick. So like these 15 phone calls I got done probably in 10 days. I'm doing them on the weekends, I'm doing them at night, I'm doing them super early in the morning. And these people are all over the world. I talk to international companies. You're talking to people. Sometimes there could be interpreters on the phone. Sometimes there's 8 to 10 other people on the call with you. It's fast and it's furious. And again, the investment banker is going to pre-flight you typically on what these questions are going to be. But and you're going to hear kind of the same questions a bit over and over. You'll start to get some patterns, right, that you'll see, but almost all of them are going to ask you something and you're like, I don't know, right? Like, and so it's a bit nerve-wracking, but it's an exciting, fun time. And so after those calls are done, then they'll say, by the 20th of February, or exactly 10 days from now, after the calls are done, we expect LOIs, letters of intent.
Okay.
And what a letter of intent is it's not a binding document, but like it's what they're going to work the contract off of, right? Okay. So like there's going to have some teeth in it, right? Like we're going to ask for some precision. And so of those 15, I think we got 7 letters of intent. And those letters of intent that say, hey, here's the thing, we'll pay you X amount of dollars. We want Devin to stay on, or we don't want Devin to stay on. We're prepared to close this quickly. We want, Devin, and if Devin stays on, we want him to stay on at 20%, 30% equity. And so basically, like, more or less the general outline.
Yeah, it's basically like it's parallel selling a house. An investment banker is like your real estate agent. They market your business like the real estate agent would market the house. They're bringing in identifying the buyers, bringing them in, selling them on the idea of this house or business, and then they're putting in their offers, and that's what the letter of intent is. And you have to then go through it and figure out, I guess, dissect every offer and figure out what looks good and what doesn't, because I have to imagine there's probably some pros and cons to everything you see.
Tons of pros and cons, right? And so the letter of intent, when they put it together, they're probably going to make it fairly vague, right? Because there's a due diligence process behind it. And so what happens is typically over the next 7-ish days, your investment banker is going to vet out those letters of intent. So they'll say, oh, you're going to give $50 million. Explain that $50 million. And you say, well, what does that mean? Explain $50 million, right? Isn't $50 million $50 million? Well, not necessarily, right?
Okay.
$50 million can be sliced and diced a lot of different ways, right? Are they going to pay you $50 million cash? Are they going to give you stock that quote unquote equals $50 million, right? Are they going to, if they give you $50 million, is that $50 million from their bank account, or is it $50 million, or is it $25 million from their bank account and $25 million that the company itself takes a loan out? So not the private equity group, but the company itself will take a loan out for $25 million, and they'll give you $25 million. And you say, well, why does that matter? It matters a lot if you're going to stay in as an owner.
Okay.
So if you stay in as an owner for 30%, that 25 million of that 50 million that they gave you, remember 25 million of it is a loan on the company that you own 30% of.
Yes.
So it changes the dynamics and the percentages. They had to explain this to me 3 or 4 times. I had to do the math. I remember I was in the shower and I took the soap and I was writing it on the wall. So I finally understood the math behind it, because I just couldn't understand it. It's just things that don't happen before. Because when you sell a house, you sell a house.
Yeah.
You don't stay on as an owner, right? You don't stay on as an owner and someone paid you with their stock and have to understand the stock value, and is that really worth that stock,
So going back to your example, the $50 million cash, that's $50 million cash, right?
Boom.
Simple as it sounds.
Easy peasy.
$50 million stock, walk me through what that kind of entails, or what that looks like.
Well, $50 million of stock that they're giving you of their company to say, hey, we're going to...
Their company, not yours.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
We're going to give you $50 million of our stock for your company. Okay? Okay, great. Now I don't own the company anymore. All I own is $50 million of stock that was worth their company and my company. I hope it's worth. I hope that stock doesn't go down.
Yeah.
I hope they do a good job running their company. I hope the acquisition was smart.
Yeah.
I hope it all works, right? Like maybe it goes up. Maybe that 50 million goes to 70 million. Holy cow, you just killed it. Maybe that $50 million goes to 0.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of times these private companies will give you their stock. It's not publicly traded, right? So how do you know what their stock is worth? Their stock is worth what they say it's worth, right? And so you have to be smart enough and shrewd enough to know that, right? And is it worth that? Is it not worth that? And so you see this all the time where people like, oh, you want $300 million? Sure, we'll give you $300 million in stock. And by the way, this is again, you just have to understand these concepts, because it's very difficult to understand. But what's going to happen is, let's say you stay on as a 30% owner, and let's say they think your company's worth $40 million. You say your company's worth $50 million, and they say, okay, fine, we'll give you a $50 million valuation. Here's stock, or here's cash, or here's whatever it is, right? But our money is preferred, and you're going to stay on at 30% owner, which means for all intents and purposes, let's say you leave $15 million in valuation in that company. Okay. Well, their stock is preferred and your stock is common. Well, whatever the definition of preferred stock is matters a lot, because they could say our preferred stock has to be returned at a rate of 8% or better, or 10% or better. So if they actually gave you a valuation, they thought it was worth 40 and they gave you $50 million valuation. And well, that means that has to make more than $50 million. It has to grow more than 8% a year of that $50 million. Okay. Which means if it doesn't, your stock gets diluted.
Okay.
And so you're sitting here thinking, oh, great, they gave me a great valuation. They're sitting here going, it doesn't really matter, because their stock's going to dilute anyways. If it's not worth 50 million, I'm going to get it back anyways. Or if it actually goes down in value, basically you lose everything. Like your stock, your common stock goes away, and their preferred, it just eats it. So, for the most part, not to state the obvious, but cash in hand is a big deal.
Cash in hand seems the best way, but there are benefits to stock if you win. Yeah. If you believe in the company and you believe in the company that's buying your company, really, right?
And there's a great pitch here from a private equity standpoint, or for somebody else's. So let's just go back to private equity. Their pitch is that in 3 to 5 years, they wouldn't be buying your company. That if they don't believe in 3 to 5 years, they can sell it for 5x. Like they're not going to buy. And there's a lot of really smart people that do this, right? Like these are, almost all these folks are, Ivy League, MBAs. I mean, they're very good at their job,
Mhm.
right? And they buy companies and they flip them in 3 to 5 years. So if you could hold on to 30%, and in 5 years it sells for 5 times that, I mean, that's
Yeah.
really great, right? Like, so there's a great pitch to it, right?
Yeah.
Whether it works out that way and
Yeah.
remains to be seen.
I'm glad you said that because as you were describing that to me in my head, I'm like, they're trying to cheat me out of my company. And it's true. I mean, and we've heard you say this on the podcast before. You look at companies all the time and you're not buying the company if it's not going to make you money.
Yeah.
So to an extent, yeah, there you do have to be shrewd with them or negotiate with them, but they are buying your company because they believe that it's going
Yeah.
to grow or they can make it grow.
Yeah, they're very smart people that have put hundreds of hours into it and have their own thesis as to how they're going to take your company and grow it in 3 to 5 years to be, hopefully worth 5 times what it is. So, if you get one of these folks, now you need to look at their track record, right? See how long they've been along, see how many funds they're on.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're they're on their very first fund, that basically means they're brand new private equity. You could be one of the first companies they're buying, right?
Yeah.
If they're on like fund number 6, each fund is, like I said, normally lasts about 3 to 5 years, right? So if they're on fund 6, they've been doing this for 15 to 30 years, and so you should be able to look historically at the companies they bought and sold. And if they're like not kind of revealing that, they should want to brag, right?
Yeah.
They should want to say like, look at this company, very similar to yours. We took it and sold it for 10 times what we bought it for. And this guy stayed on at 40% owner. They say this is a common expression. He made more on the second bite of the apple than he did on the first. And that's what the pitch is like, stay on board. You'll make more on the second bite of the apple than you did on the first. And we're going to grow this thing. And it's a great pitch, right? And they're most of them are very good at helping you scale companies. They're very smart people. They help you bring in good folks. They help you recruit good folks that maybe you probably couldn't have recruited before. And they grow companies. That's what they do. And most of them have a great track record, or many of them have a great track record. Yeah.
In your experience, how many business owners stay on versus just leave completely?
Yeah. I'd say there's actually hard statistics around this, so I don't want to give out a real number. But I will tell what I'm going to tell you is that the folks that I've known who have stayed on, and this is going to sound very negative, right? In general, probably wish they hadn't have stayed on. And I don't mean this negatively towards private equity or anything like that, because I'm actually a big fan of it. But I think what happens is it's not necessarily even that they didn't make their money back, because I think most of them have probably gotten pretty good returns on investment. But you become an entrepreneur because you want to be an entrepreneur. You want to work for yourself. You don't want to answer to anybody. And you've done this for 20 years.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you're answering to the freaking board of directors. They want to see this report. They want to have this phone call. You're answering for, I mean, good folks aren't going to be too much in your business, but like for years, you've done what you wanted to do with having to answer no one, good, bad, or indifferent, right?
Yeah.
And now you've got to answer to people. And by the way, they're going to not agree with you on everything.
Yeah.
And they're going to want to hey, thank you very much. That's cute that's your answer, but we're smarter than you. We're going to do it this way.
Yeah.
And unless you're the majority, that's
tough pill to swallow.
It's a tough pill to swallow. And so it's not necessarily that they don't get a big second bite of the apple. It's that it's not why they became an entrepreneur in the first place.
Yeah.
And then there's other pressures as well. So one of the things we haven't talked about in that $50 million, there could be an earnout, right? Because they'll say, okay, well, great. We're going to give you, $40 million and you have a $10 million earnout. And so an earnout could be anything. It could, but it could say, hey, if you hit budget for the next 2 years that you say you're going to hit, we'll give you that additional $10 million. Right.
Okay.
But you could get all of it. You could get none of it. Maybe you can even get more of it if you double, triple earn. But now you've got this other stress of this earnout, right? And the money is just kind of I got to hit these numbers. Otherwise, I'm not going to get my money. Or, there could be holdbacks, right? You could have a lawsuit against you that hasn't been settled yet, right? And you can't wait for everything to be perfect when you close. So they'll say, hey, of that $50 million, we're going to keep $5 million back in a holdout. Like, and basically this and if this lawsuit goes away, cool, you get your $5 million. If it doesn't, we've got this reserve to pay for it. And so there's that holdback amount too. So there's all of these nuances that they're trying to hedge their bets and you're trying to hedge your bets, right? And so as it kind of evolves, that $50 million becomes significantly different than what you might think $50 million actually is.
Yeah. What about dividends?
Yeah. This one shook me. This one really, I was like, was so difficult for me to understand because for years you take dividends, right? So I would pay myself a salary. And as the company was profitable and grew, once a quarter, I'd pay myself a dividend. And, the dividend is more than what I lived off of than my paycheck. The dividends were big. And so the idea is like, I asked them that, like, and it was literally like 2 weeks before we closed. I didn't understand this, but I was like, so we'll still be getting dividends, right? And they're like, no, you don't get, like, we're not going to pay out dividends. And I'm like, they said, we're going to keep all the money in the company to grow the company, which is totally different than the way most entrepreneurs run their company. I would reinvest in my company, but I definitely pulled dividends out because I wanted, I had to, buy a house, put braces on the kids, right? Like I'm taking dividends, according to this prospectus, it's like, well, we should have, $5 million in profit next year. We should have $8 million in profit next year. What are we going to do with that? And they're like, well, first off, we're going to pay back debt. And I'm like, oh, I forgot. They're leveraging debt against this. And they're like, and we're going to use that $8 million. We're going to reinvest it in the company for growth. And then if we do take a dividend, it will basically only be enough to pay for our taxes and your taxes. And I'm like, I hadn't counted on that. Yeah. And they said, that's why you're going to take out your money now, because really you're not going to probably get a dividend until we either recapitalize or, we sell in 5 or 7 years,
Okay. So back to, we got all our letters of intent. What happens next now?
Yeah, as far as we've gotten. Yeah.
There's a lot involved in the letters of intent.
Yeah. So the investment banker should be trying to break down what that $50 million means, right? So these letters of intent are basically, they kind of, we ask some super hard questions, and some of them are going to be obvious, right? Like some of them, like the price just isn't going to be right, and you're just going to kind of throw it out the window. Some of them are going to say things like, Devin has to stay on, or we don't want Devin. And you go, well, I want to stay on. I'm not ready to retire. And so, the ones that say we don't want Devin, we're just going to fold it up and we're strategic and we're going to lay off half the people. Then maybe you go, I don't want that one, right? So some of them are going to be very clear. So those 7 letters of intent over the course of 10 days or so are going to be vetted out as to which ones are going to work for you. And like I said, it could be some of them work for you or don't work for you because the money's not right, the structure, like I said, if it's a strategic, they're going to come in and basically cut all of your executives, right? And they'll cut as much as possible because they're just going to absorb your company and take your customers. And so sometimes you can go, well, that's not right for us either, right? So typically as you look through all of these, it will become clear. In our case, I think it came down to 4 letters of intent that were all close enough that I wanted to go to the next level. So those guys, those 4 all came out, flew out and met with me face to face. So remember, we're talking about millions of dollars. I've never even met them face to face. I've never even shook a hand, right? And they're sending you letters over saying, how am I give you these millions of dollars? And I've never even met the person, right? So at this point, we narrowed down to 4, and then they come out. And now I have to do an in-person song and dance, right? Where we go through the presentation. I'll bring in some of my executives. They'll want to interview them. They'll want to kind of understand how they think. They'll want to know what the team's like. And basically these song and dances are 4 to 8 hours, right? Like, so again, I think, one of the disservices that Shark Tank does, when they show and they're like, oh, don't people make decisions in like 12 minutes?
Yeah.
No, like nobody's throwing their money around like that without like literally deep, long, hard interview questions. And so, imagine it's like 4 to 8 hours of me interviewing them, then I'm interviewing me, other people, then poking at the financials. And we did this, with those 4 different letters of intent, narrowed it down. And then we basically told them, all right, now best and final. They came back with a real meaty LOI.
Mhm.
It was kind of a best and final offer. And
Yeah.
from there, I think 2 of them dropped out or we kicked out, and I think we got like 2 and then we
You
picked the one.
Mhm.
And so then the fun begins, right? As if all this hasn't been like stressful enough. Once we do that, now it's due diligence. So you'll sign typically, your broker's even going to negotiate the time limits. Like we'll say like you will have a 30-day, a 90-day, a 60-day due diligence period, right? And you're trying to shorten it as short as possible. They're probably trying to lengthen it a little bit, although they want deals to be done quickly too, right? So, but for the most part, you're trying to get to a reasonable number of days to do due diligence. And once you sign that, I remember signing it. I still have a picture. My wife took a picture of me signing it, right? I thought, oh, I'm done. No, that's when like the fun really began, because now we're talking due diligence. So, I mean, in my case, they hired an accounting firm to come in and audit everything. Like constant questions. I was on calls with either my broker or them, the buyers, probably a couple hours a day, every day, along with the accountants coming in. In some cases, if you have inventory, they're going to send people to count inventory, which they should, right? Like if you say you have $1 million in inventory, they want to see that there's $1 million in inventory, right? So there's this due diligence period, and it's definitely the proctoral exam. I mean, it's like there's going to be no area left unchecked. They checked all of our IT, right? They did research on me. They found out that when I was 20 years old, let's just say I'd done something stupid at 20 years. I'm like, that's on my record, right? Anyways, yeah, like and they did personality tests on me. They interviewed like all of my executives because they were planning on keeping some of the executives, we put together a budget, which was fun, kind of in the what it would look like moving forward. But I mean, it was intense. And what was supposed to be 90 days, I think dragged on for about probably 4.5 months.
And did they have to keep extending it? So you'd have to sign like a
We
new
did,
letter of
yeah.
intent, or you'd have to sign something that was showing this due diligence is lasting longer.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you as the business owner could have the option to say, nope, I'm going to walk away and look at somebody else.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So each time it extended there was a reason for it, and it was typically on me. And so I was comfortable extending it. And then, in my case, I got to the very last, I mean, we're probably a week or two. I think when I found out I wasn't going to get dividends, right? And it's so much drinking from a fire hose, right? Because I didn't have anyone to teach me any of this, right? I learned it along the way. And again, I don't pretend that you're going to understand half of this, but at least it's going to give you some insight on questions to ask. But it was so like emotionally draining, physically draining, and exhaust. I mean, everything that goes with it, that I got down to basically the 11th hour, and I looked at, because we built this forecast and this, and I was like, I don't want to sell this. Like they're bringing in leverage. The company's going to, take out a loan to go and grow. And I'm like, I can do all this on my own. Right. And I looked at it, I'm like, I can do this on my own. And I called him up and basically bowed out. And this case, I really like the private equity firm because they were very graceful with me. They didn't blow up.
Yeah.
They said, hey, we totally, we understand. Wish you had told us sooner because we invested like $200,000 in due diligence. But we understand. Tell you what, we're going to assign one of our VPs. You can see all of all the work we've done on you, everything that we think we can do with this company. And, you can go do it on your own. We'll show you it. If you want to go on your own, God bless you. But we think after you see all this, you're going to appreciate us and you're going to want to do it with us. And I kind of liken it to like you break up with your girlfriend and she freaks out on you and lights your house on fire. She probably wasn't the right one. You break up with your girlfriend and she's like, oh, that sucks because I really love you, but I understand, and maybe we'll end up together 6 weeks from now or a year from now, and you're like, oh, maybe she was the one, right? And that's kind of how it was, right? Yeah. And they were the one. They were very graceful, and we ended up closing. Yeah.
So some point in there, you had the letter of intent. I assume you're getting a contract then as well, right? And again, I'm thinking about this in terms of like selling my house. I have the offer. We have, the where I'm from, it's a Binzer period or an
Yeah,
inspection
sure.
period. And then at the end, you have the title and
Yep.
everything. Is that when the contract comes in or?
So that's interesting. So the contract is probably, I want to say there was like 8 to 9 different legal documents. And so this is kind of running in conjunction with, as they're doing the diligence on me, I'm reviewing the contract. So the contract is supposed to match the LOI, but remember the LOI is a page and a half, probably font 11. The contracts, and I say contracts, or I should say legal documents, I think in my case was about 450 pages, font 7, and so as they're doing the due diligence, I'm staying up, to 2 a.m. reading through contracts, and all of the different documents. And there's just so many documents, and you're going to find like board minutes that you forgot, you didn't know you're supposed to do, right? So you got to go back and backdate board minutes and do all of these different things. And I should say create board minutes and all of these things that like you just don't know that you're supposed to do, and create this entity that's going to buy this. And then, by the way, remember, there's also a bank involved in our case. So not only is the private equity group doing their due diligence, well, the bank is about to loan you millions of dollars. So the bank is also doing their due diligence. So again, now you've got the banker, the investment banker, which actually isn't a banker, but the investment banker, the broker or whatever, that's navigating, working with the bank, that's working with the private equity firm, that's working with you, trying to keep everybody happy, spinning lots of plates. And then you're working with the investment banker, you're working with your attorney, and you're working with your CPA on these contracts. So as they're doing all of that, you're working on the contracts. And I'm going to tell you, I don't feel like this group was trying to pull anything over on me at all. I think they were very honest, but I still redlined probably every single page of that contract, and it took us months to get through all of it. And so imagine, by the way, your attorney has stuff going on too, or she has stuff going on too. So everybody's like frantically trying to get this done. People are pushing, tempers are high. There's lots of zeros, right? You're working at 3 a.m. and I'm not exaggerating. We were emailing back and forth at 3 a.m. with accountants, attorneys, myself, the private equity groups, and my banker, right? And this is going on for weeks, as frantic as you can, trying to get this deal done. And as you go through, and then at the end, you have like this giant closing party, right? So this is, for me, when I did this particular one, when I closed, it was, I don't know, that was probably 14, 15 years ago, maybe. But since then, and companies I bought and sold since then, you can do everything through DocuSign. It's a little different, but like literally in this case, I met with my attorney. We had a giant table laid out with everything. My wife and I went in, and it took us probably 2 hours to go through and sign everything and make sure everything was correct. And it was mayhem. And then it all goes into kind of this like escrow account, and then the money comes in from the bank, and the money comes in from the private equity firm, and then it gets dispersed to you, and you sign this and you sign that. And so it's this, hours long of this whole domino ripple effect going on. And at the end, hopefully you pop champagne and go and sleep.
You can finally rest.
And so a lot of people say, okay, well, great. It's a $50 million deal. How much of that is mine? What do I take home? Well, there's so many things, like I said, to determine with that. So first off, is any of that in an earnout? Okay. Is $50 million actually $40 million with a $10 million earnout? Is there any holdback money? And if so, what are the clauses that like release that holdback money? So it's a $50 million deal, really a $40 million deal with a $10 million earnout and $5 million in holdout. So now we're down to $35 million, right? Is that $35 million cash or is it stock? And of that $35 million, let's just take the easy route. Let's say it's all cash, right? So of that $35 million, now your accountants have to determine which of that $35 million is going to be taxed at a capital gain rate, and which is going to be taxed at a normal income. Because at that point, if it's taxed at normal income, you're probably paying 40% plus, right? So versus cap gain, which most people are like, oh, I hate cap gain. Well, trust me, you'd much rather have cap gain than normal income. So you're trying, and how the deal is structured will determine how much of that $35 million in this case is capital gain versus how much of it is normal income. So let's say it's, $10 million of capital gain and $25 million of normal income. Or I'm sorry, let's flip it around. Let's say $10 million of normal income and 25 of capital gain. So this capital gain, you're going to take probably, I don't know, call it 75% of that, 25. So now you're down to, I don't know, I'm not terrific, Mac, 18 million or so. And of this side of that 10 million, taking home 6. So now you're down to $24 million you have cash that is, and remember, they don't pay. This doesn't come out of your account. It's not like payroll, right? They're not taking it out and putting it aside. You're responsible to pay that.
Yeah.
So that means like next year when you go, you're literally writing a check that literally says, how many zeros am I sending to the IRS, right? It's like that money aside to be able to pay that. And then also, let's assume you have debt, right? So let's assume, you're talking 35 million. Now you're down to 18 million, or I'm sorry, of that 35 million, you're going to have to pay off debt, right? So if you had a $5 million loan against your company, that gets paid back. If you have partners or options that you owe other folks, like if you're a 50-50 partner, you're going to get half of that, right? So that gets cut in half. And let's say you're a 50-50 partner, but you also provided 10% in options. Well, remember, now you're only getting 90% of that. So the number really starts to change as you go. And now, don't forget, you have your attorneys, you have your accountants, and you also have the investment banker. So in a $50 million deal, the investment banker is probably going to take, probably $1.5 to $2.5 million, right? So that investment banker is paid. So, it's all slightly different. And like I said, the way I just laid it out is in a cash deal, right? It gets way more complicated. There's stock or lots of leverage against it. So it's very, 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 very complex. It's the deep end of the pool. And I highly recommend that folks get a great attorney that understands this, and not only understands it, but can explain it to you. That's what's going to be important. You have to be able to understand this. You have to be very comfortable, and you're going to have to slow the process down so that you do understand it. Not only that you understand it, that you're comfortable with it, right? So you have to be very secure where you're at, right? Because like I said, it was me and my attorney versus, Stanford MBAs, and I think the other attorneys had 8, right? And so I had to be comfortable enough to go, hey, you guys are all super smart. I'm not.
Yeah.
Explain it to me, and then not only explain it, but I got to get comfortable with it. And if that takes me time, it's going to take me time. But you're on my time frame, I'm not on your time frame. And so you have to be secure and comfortable enough to go and do that. And then you have to be willing to go through and read those contracts. You have to be willing to understand all this. And because and again, I'm not saying anyone's trying to get you. They're not necessarily trying to pull anything over. But this is a big deal. This is your baby that you poured years and years of your life into. And it's not just about the dollars and cents. It's about making sure that the far side of the transaction, everyone gets along. Because remember, if you're going to stay on as a partial owner, these people that you're negotiating with today, tomorrow are your business partners.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And tomorrow you're going to have to agree on stuff. Tomorrow you're going to have to like each other, right? And obviously your current business partners, you want to take care of them. You want to take care of the company. You want to make sure that this company thrives on the far side of this deal. So there's so many things to think about. It's just not about how fat is your bank account at the end of the day. But all of these other things that go into it are necessary. And it's quite daunting, and I'm not here to tell you that it shouldn't be daunting. I'm here to tell you that it should be daunting, and that you do need help, and that you do want to make sure that you understand, take your time, and bring in people to walk you through this process.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Devin.
Yeah. So I hope this works out well for you and your company. I hope you grow. I hope you achieve your dreams. And make sure you save these podcasts, because maybe you're not at this point right now. Maybe this is the first time you're hearing it, right? But as you start to progress and start to think about an exit, listen to this over and over again, understand it, and then it will help the question. So when these investment bankers reach out to you, you can start understanding the process a little more specifically, how it would apply to your situation. So I hope this helps.